I think it's not just about, I mean, of course, if the tests are wrong, that's a big problem, but also there's a way to communicate this kind of news with someone, you know, especially someone like you that had it in her mind. There is a way to communicate this kind of news.
She said, "You are not a good candidate for egg freezing." I said, "Okay, can you help me understand that?" And she said, "Well, it's such a brutal process on the body and you'll maybe have one egg, so why would you do it?" And so I said, "Well, does this mean I'll never get pregnant?" And she said, "You might, but it's going to be really hard."
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Madinat Mom Podcast. I'm Nour, your host, and today's episode challenges everything we've been told about motherhood and timelines. My guest today became a first-time mom at the age of 40, a few weeks shy of her 41st birthday. Nesma is a third culture kid that has dedicated her career life to social development, and she is now settling into her new routine of working full-time and raising her beautiful little daughter, Ray, alongside her husband. Today's episode shares a very important message with women everywhere. Life doesn't always go according to the plan that we have in mind or that we're told we're supposed to follow. It sometimes has its own plans for us, and that's okay. Sometimes life doesn't follow a traditional path. Nesma's here to share with us her story from pregnancy to embracing motherhood at the age of 40. And we're also going to talk about those social pressures that women face and the guilt that comes with sometimes not following that path that we're told we need to be following. And stick around because we're going to end this episode with talking about why it's so important to nurture yourself first and foremost, mind and body. So hi, Nesma.
Hi, Nour.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you have honestly a very inspiring story. I've told you this, but let's go back a little bit to your journey leading up to motherhood. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I was actually only a mother at age 40 for 3 weeks. So the majority has been at 41. But yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I never really knew when that was going to be or if it was going to happen. But it was something that was important to me. It was something that I had expressed to my boyfriend at the time, now my husband. He was a little bit on the fence, but I knew I was going to crack him and we were going to get there. I took a little longer than most people do to get married. And I knew after I got married that I wanted to get pregnant pretty soon, just again because of my age, not because I felt too much pressure, but just because I wanted to be healthy and active. I wanted to be able to show up as best as I could for a baby if that was in the cards. At the time, my husband and I were not living in the same country, and I didn't want to raise a child by myself, especially in the first year because I had no idea what I was getting into. So the process took about a year until we were both in the same country, and then went pretty fast after that. So it took a long time to get there, and Ray is, at the time of recording, just a week shy of her 7-month birthday. So it's been really fun and hard and crazy and exciting and beautiful and challenging and all the adjectives.
But you guys also did long distance a bit before
we did.
You got married.
Yeah. That was tough. I mean, I think we were two people who put our career first, and that took us to different places. I've been in Dubai for almost 9 years now, and my husband was all over. And it was tough. We knew that we wanted to start a life together, but life just wasn't there yet. So we met in Egypt. We did long distance for over 5 years, and then finally took the plunge and got married in 2022, towards the end of 2022. Got pregnant in 2023, had a baby in 2024. So a bit of an expedited timeline once it finally happened.
Is he here now?
He is.
Yeah. He's moved to the UAE?
Yes. I was not going to get pregnant until that happened. So he moved to the UAE, and then we got pregnant pretty soon after that. Yeah.
And how did it feel becoming a mom at, 41 minus?
Yeah, 41 minus. Look, it's not something you can deny. Like, everybody tells you, oh, your age. Even when you go to the doctor, before I got pregnant, it was the questions of like, well, are you thinking of getting pregnant? And everyone around you is freezing their eggs or using their frozen eggs, and you can't avoid the conversation, really. So I think going into it, I was mentally prepared at the thought of becoming a mother, but not prepared whatsoever once it actually happened. And so it's been incredible. It's been, it's the most rewarding thing on earth and also the hardest thing on earth. But it feels really good. It's fun. I lucked out. I got a fun baby. But yeah, it's great. I wish I did it 10 years ago. And I think that would have impacted kind of how many kids we had. But very happy now with where we are now.
And I have to ask about when you first saw that pregnancy test, what was your reaction and what was your husband's reaction?
He will not like me sharing his reaction. But so I knew we were actively trying. So when it happened, I guess I wasn't so surprised because I was waiting for it. Mm-hmm. I was a little bit surprised that it happened so fast because because of like an egg freezing mishap that happened. But I was really excited, and I was so happy that it happened so fast. I was surprised that it happened so fast. I wanted to have one of those like Instagram moments where I told my husband and he started breaking down, and it was so beautiful. But he was at work when I took the test, so I left the test in his bathroom. And when he came home, he came out of the bathroom. He said, "Why did you leave this in here?" I was like, "Well, read, friend." So we didn't get the Instagram moment, and it was sheer panic on his face because he knew we were trying, but I think it like all of a sudden became very real. But yeah, then it was, I had a really easy pregnancy. I know it's not fair to say that, but I did, and like it was just a really great experience. Didn't have the Instagram moment, but it was a good experience.
On the contrary, I think it's so nice and so refreshing to hear such a positive pregnancy story. I mean, you're smiling as you're talking about it.
Yeah.
It really shows that, you had such a nice experience throughout your pregnancy.
Yeah.
For me, what we did, I actually didn't get my Instagram moment either because I put the test in a mug and then I left a little camera recording my husband's reaction.
Okay.
But he just took the mug, he took the test, and he walked out. And so I got no reaction whatsoever on the camera.
Yeah.
But I think those Instagram moments sometimes are, I mean, I don't know. I've never been able to get one of those myself, but we're still trying,
Yeah, it's fake. What you realize is like everything online is not true too. Yeah. So, yeah.
I actually told him, can you walk back in that room and show me your reaction on the camera? But of course he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been genuine anyways. But do you want to share a bit more about, you did mention that there was a freezing eggs.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, again, it came at a time where you're just confronted with your age everywhere you go, like what you're eating, how you're working out, what discussions you're having, family, all of that. And I had a friend who was working at a fertility clinic, and she said, you can just come in and do the test and check what your egg reserve is, and then forget it. You're young, you're active, you eat well, like you're gonna be fine. But for peace of mind, come in and do the test. So I went in, I did the test, and you know how when you do a blood result and a blood test and you get the results like on your email and you can read and you see like where the indicators are and you're usually within those indicators. So I got the same thing for my egg reserve test. And they tell you if you're between this range and this range, or this number and this number in this range, you're good. I was so far left of the range that it was essentially telling me I had no eggs. And so when you're sitting at your desk, open your email, you see this, you're like, I'm pretty sure I know how to read a test, but why would this get sent to me before talking with the doctor? So anyways, I called the clinic and I said, I'd like to speak to the doctor to understand these test results. I went in. This doctor had the worst bedside manner whatsoever. And she said, well, this doesn't mean you can't get pregnant, but you probably won't. I said, okay, good morning, And so I walked out. I called my friend. I said, I didn't really have a good experience. And she said, oh, that's interesting. That doctor is usually really nice. And I said, okay, well, if that doctor is usually really nice and she's saying it so bluntly, there's really no sugarcoating it. This is how it is. So I called my husband and he said, that's okay. That's your body and this is our journey. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen and we'll see. So I kind of put having kids out of my mind. I said, this is my story. It's not going to happen. Here's the medical result that shows that. And then I kind of put it off. I didn't pressure my husband to move to Dubai. I didn't pressure him to get married. This was before we got married. Didn't do anything. And then I was at a routine gynecology appointment one day and she was saying, oh, are you ever thinking about getting pregnant? And I said, oh, no, I can't. And the doctor said, what do you mean you can't? And so I was undergoing a test at the time. And she said, I'm actually looking at your ovaries right now. And here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 eggs in your right ovary. And I can't see anything in your left because you have a cyst, but here you go. And that blew my mind because all of a sudden it was, but this is back on the table. What does this mean? Okay, now I need to get married. Now I need to have a baby. And my timeline now has just shortened. And I lost 3 years thinking that this wasn't going to be a thing. So not telling anybody that don't go and do the test, go and do the test, but get a second opinion, get a third opinion. And don't kind of settle because science makes mistakes, I guess. But yeah, it was sad. And I feel like there was a lot of time lost. Yeah.
So honestly, Nesma, it sounds like it was a roller coaster of emotions for you. Can you walk us through the process in your brain of actually, because you said you came to terms with the fact that you might not have kids.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I ever really processed it fully. And I think it's because my husband didn't make a big deal out of it. And he just said, okay, that's fine. If our family is me and you, then that's our family. Shout out to my husband. He's amazing. But yeah, it was hard. But I think my personality also, I'm very good at compartmentalizing. And so that was one thing that happened. And I heard it. And I said, okay, what do we do now? And I probably threw myself into work, threw myself into the gym, and threw myself into 10 other things. And it really was, I told a couple people in my family, I said, oh, I did this test. I can't have kids. So no rush to get married now because get married to have a kid. And so it was, I will just live life and go on with how things are. And it wasn't until I was at that doctor's appointment where she said, surely you can have kids. Like I'm looking in your body right now. It was a horrible day. And I called my friend that worked at the fertility clinic and I said, you guys need to fire that doctor because it's not right. Your test is not right. She's not right. And so it was a moment of, this is the worst thing I could hear, but this is life. Let's move on. And then, like I said, now I think, God, what could I have done with those years? What could I have done? Could I have gotten my husband to move here? Could we have gotten married earlier? Could we have had a baby 3 years ago, 2 years ago? such is life, and everyone's journey is everyone's journey. And I'm okay now. And I was okay then too. But you can't help but think, like, what if? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's not just about, I mean, of course, if the tests are wrong, that's a big problem. But also there's a way to communicate this kind of news with someone, you know, especially someone like you that had it in her mind. There is a way to communicate this kind of news.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, this doctor came out and just said, oh, you are not a good candidate for egg freezing. I said, okay, can you help me understand that? And she said, well, it's such a brutal process on the body and you'll maybe have one egg. So why would you do it? And so I said, well, does this mean I'll never get pregnant? And she said, you might, but it's going to be really hard. So every line that came out was just like the knife went deeper and deeper. You're not a good candidate. You don't have any eggs. It's not impossible, but it's going to be really hard. And once you kind of hear all of that and it compounds, you're like, okay, well, I guess there's really, like, where do you go from here? What you're saying is concrete. And you walk out, you get in your car, you start your car, you drive home, and that's your life now. You're not going to be a mom. And as you said before, there's a way to deliver that message. And it's probably one of the hardest messages to ever receive. And there are many women that receive that and it's actually true. And in my case, it wasn't. But had that been my story forever, it would have eventually hit me. And I don't know how I would have processed it then. So I guess I was lucky to have been able to compartmentalize and not think about it at the time. But you do always have the regret of, well, there were years that were lost based on someone's poor delivery of a message.
At what age was this?
It was during COVID, so probably 5 years ago. I was 36, I think, at the time. 35, 36. So like in my prime. Yeah. But that's okay.
So before this, did it ever cross your mind that motherhood might not happen for you?
No. I always knew, either I always knew or I always wanted it to happen. So I was kind of willing it to happen. No, I was a young woman. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have a family. Like, you don't think that there can be a hiccup in that plan. And we've talked about this. People don't tell the truth to each other. So you are not confronted with the fact that there could be things that stand in the way or obstacles. So no, my path was, one day I'm going to meet the right man. I'm going to get married. We're going to have the white picket fence and the baby and the dog and all those things. So that was always in my mind as something that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Because even at 36, while that is young, some women start feeling the pressure from like age 30.
Yeah.
And they're told they need to have all their kids by the age of like 35, 36.
Right.
And so I love the fact that you're actually living proof that's, well, first of all, that's not the case. Second of all, you did the test and you didn't get the response that you wanted. And yet, it still happened for you. I think it's so important, as you said, to remind people to always get a second opinion,
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And science changes every day too. And people are having babies in so many different ways. There are options that are available to us in this part of the world. There's options that are available outside. But there are many ways to have a baby, and there are many ways to start a family, and there are many ways to be a mom. So my message would be, don't let one thing that happens to you or one thing that gets told to you really be the end point for your journey or for your process.
Mm-hmm. And you've also mentioned that because of your age, you won't be having a second kid. Is there a reason why you don't want to explore that further?
Yeah. There's no exploring. I mean, barring an accident, there's no exploring. Despite trying to change the narrative and saying, okay, it doesn't matter, it can happen at any time, bones start to hurt and backs start to hurt. And raising a child is a full-time job. And I think it was a joint decision that we want to show up as our best selves for our child. And I'm not sure, if you want to have a second kid, there's the planning involved, and there's 10 months of being pregnant, and then at least 18 years of being there full time. And so just the reality is we want our bones to work. We want to be able to run after our baby. And I don't know, as you keep going, how much our bodies will keep up. So again, had I started this process 3, 4, 5 years ago, decision would have been different, maybe. But right now, we're happy with one. We're happy with our family of 3, and I don't think we want to change it.
And when you found out the gender, knowing that you're gonna have one,
yeah,
did you feel any kind of way towards the fact that you're having a baby girl?
Yeah, I didn't want a girl. Everyone around me was having boys. Everyone close to me was having boys. And I could see the relationship between my girlfriends and their sons. And I was like, I want that. I want a baby to look at me the way that these boys look at their moms. And they say boys are for the mom and girls are for the dad. And I knew, because I was only having one, excuse me, that was all I wanted. And then I also didn't want to know the sex. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I didn't want to know the sex. And I was happy to go into labor and find out when the baby came out. And I convinced my husband of this for probably the first 2 months. And he said, okay, this is kind of cool. We'll be, the unique couple that doesn't find out the sex of their baby. And there were some discussions like, well, how do we do the nursery? What color do we do it? I said, well, we're not doing a pink nursery anyway, or a blue nursery anyway, so it doesn't matter. Well, all these conversations about gender neutral things. And then a few months in, my husband said, the baby's an abstract concept to me, and I can't relate. And said, you're carrying it, you feel it, you're tired, you're this, you're that. He's like, this baby doesn't, I don't know anything. I don't know if I'm a boy dad, I'm a girl dad. And that broke me. That really, when he said the baby's an abstract concept, I said, okay, you're fine. And on the spot, I called the doctor's office. I said, I want to come in tomorrow and do the test, and I want to find out, do an ultrasound, not a test. And so I went, and we got the envelope, and we went to our favorite restaurant, and we asked the chef to make us a cake, and we did a small little gender reveal at home. And I can show you the video. I faked it when I saw it was a girl. I faked it. My husband immediately started crying because he wanted a girl. And I put on a brave face, and I was like, yay. But inside, I was like, I'm never going to get the boy. I'm never going to get the boy love. Now I couldn't imagine it any other way. I don't want a boy. I'm so happy with a girl. But yeah, gender disappointment, it's real.
Yeah.
It's real. I was like, oh, I just want a baby. But no, I was upset. And I couldn't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell anybody. And when I saw my husband react the way he did, I thought, I'm terrible. I'm so horrible. I'm not happy. And again, compartmentalized that, went on with it. And then as time progressed, I said, no, the baby girl's going to be wonderful. And yeah, she's the best. So I got over it.
I think you said it best. Gender disappointment is actually a real thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people deal with it, but nobody talks about it.
No.
And that's because of the sort of the guilt and the shame that comes with it of I should be happy no matter what.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, we have this version of motherhood in our head. And when that doesn't come to life, there will be that sense of disappointment. And I think it's perfectly normal to experience those kind of feelings.
Yeah.
Because as you said, when your baby was born, you wouldn't have it any other way.
No way. Even while I was pregnant and getting close, and I didn't buy clothes before she was born, but just the thought, I made her nursery purple. It's my favorite color. I wanted to indoctrinate her into that too. But in the lead up, it started to, when it starts to feel real, or I guess realer than real, because it starts to feel real very early. yeah, I gradually got there, but nobody told me like, it's okay if you don't get what you want. It's okay if you decide you only want to have one baby and it's not what you were expecting. Nobody talks about that. And you process in silence. Not just this, everything about pregnancy and about motherhood, you process in silence because you feel like you either the people around you can't relate or they will judge you or you're not supposed to be having those feelings. You internally question whether you should be having those feelings too. So it's hard. You're doing the hardest job in the world and you can't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so tough.
Yeah, that's because of everything we've been told and everything we've seen, right? So you go on TV, you go on social media, you talk to family and friends, and everybody makes you feel like you should feel a certain way.
Right.
And when you don't,
Right.
you question yourself,
Yeah.
right? But for anyone listening, gender disappointment is a real thing. And it's perfectly normal to feel a certain way when you find out the gender of your baby because you had imagined it would be something else. That's not something to be ashamed of. When your baby comes, it's not going to make you any less of an amazing parent. Tell me a little bit about those feelings. When you held Ray for the first time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's no way to describe it. There's no way to describe it. Like when they put the baby on you, I remember I had one hand on her back and one hand under her butt. And it was the smallest, softest thing. And now when I hold her that way and I put my hand under her, I get such an intense flashback to that moment. And you're on drugs and there's beeping and monitors and it's sensory overload at the time. Everybody's talking, people are crying. But there's just that feeling. There's no way to describe it. And everybody feels differently. And I always ask my husband, what was it like? When she came out, what was it like? And when you saw her, and he doesn't remember. He's like, I can't think about it. Like I remember her after, but he doesn't remember the moment. And I keep wanting to ask him because I couldn't see, like you can't see anything. I didn't have a cesarean, but I couldn't see her until she was actually out. And I want to like understand what the vibe was like in the room and everything. And he's not able to explain it. But, yeah, I think just like the muscle memory of that first hold is something I'll never forget. Yeah.
So Nesma, you had, a very smooth pregnancy, alhamdulillah. Let's talk a little bit about your postpartum experience. How was that?
I had a really smooth pregnancy. I worked out my whole pregnancy. I never had any morning sickness. I had no energy in the first trimester, but I guess that's normal. And then I worked out until 3 weeks before the baby was born. So mentally, I thought, bounce back. We'll be fine. I'll be back in the gym. Like I was wildly unprepared for what postpartum actually looks like. So I had the baby. I had alhamdulillah, a very easy delivery as well. And then you don't know. Nobody tells you you won't be wearing normal underwear and that you will be bleeding for a very long time. And that you will still look pregnant for a while after you deliver the baby. And you're not going to be hungry. And like, there were just so many things where I said, why don't I mentally, I want to be in a good place, but I'm not there. And then the random bouts of crying. Nobody tells you that you'll cry for no reason. I cried because my cousin's husband was holding the baby. And I just started crying and my mom looked at me. She said, why are you crying? I said, I don't know, but I think I want the baby back. But I don't know. And there's just, you feel you're living an out-of-body experience. Like you're in your body in the sense that things are physically happening to you that you can't control and that you had no awareness of. But alhamdulillah, I was also mentally there to be able to say, like, why am I feeling this? And why can I not do this? And why? It was, again, nobody tells you. Nobody tells you it's okay to not understand what's going on. It's okay to cry. It's okay to bleed for 2.5 months after you have a baby. Nobody told me any of that. Nobody told me any of that.
Do you feel like, did you have these conversations with like family members or friends or?
No. The only conversations I remember having were people saying, oh my God, you're having a baby. You're never going to sleep again. Sleep now. Which is such a weird thing to tell people. Like, we sleep every day anyway.
Yeah.
You know, that's that. So the sleep now, sleep before the baby comes. Honestly, sleep is the one thing I feel we can get by without. You learn to cope. You can drink many cups of coffee and you can get through your day. But no, I was not prepared. I was not the one conversation that a good friend had with me, and it was one line. She said, breastfeeding is not intuitive. And that was it. And we can get into that, but no, there was nobody who was saying anything. Congratulations, it's so exciting. You're going to have a baby. It's so cute. It's so exciting. Your life is going to change. Just make sure you sleep now. It was not helpful, guys. It was not helpful.
I mean, sleeping now is not going to make up for the lack of sleep that you actually face.
And it's mean to tell a pregnant lady sleep now because you don't sleep when you're pregnant. You definitely don't sleep. So yeah, there were so many things I wish there was even a one-liner to just stick in your head so that you could do your own research about, so that you could be mentally prepared for. But no, I was not having those conversations.
I think pregnant lady also, I feel like we don't sleep and that's your body's way of preparing you for what's really coming. Because I mean, the lack of sleep with a newborn is very, very difficult.
Yes.
And that can also intensify the emotions that you feel and the crying and everything. But were there any challenges in specific that you remember?
Not being able to breastfeed. That was the one thing that was a shock. And, I'm such a nerd. I took all the classes. I read all the books. I signed up for everything that exists on the internet. I purchased every online course you can purchase. And I knew what a good latch looked like. I knew how long a baby was supposed to latch for. I knew everything. And I breastfed for a day and a half. And then it stopped working. And there was nothing that would have prepared me for it might not work. It might not work. Not only is it not intuitive, it's hard. And if it doesn't come together, it doesn't come together. And that was a big, big, big one that nobody prepared me for. And even afterward, it was a hard conversation after baby was born, after breastfeeding didn't work, after mentally trying to wrap my head around not being able to do the one job as women you think you're supposed to be able to do. That was a big one.
So, Nesma, can you tell us a bit more about, you're saying it didn't work.
Yeah.
Walk us through that.
Yeah, it was, so Ray was born. She was born on a Monday night. She did the breast crawl. She was a perfect baby. Did the breast crawl, latched. We had the golden hour. It was amazing. Tuesday, perfect baby, latched, drank, everything. Wednesday, we got discharged from the hospital, and she was latched, but she would not unlatch, and she was crying at the same time. So stressful for her, stressful for me, stressful for my husband. And then from Wednesday to Thursday, when we had her first pediatrician visit, she just could not drink anything. She couldn't latch. She wasn't getting any milk. It was probably the worst 24 hours of my life. And the worst 24 hours of everyone around me too. Like my husband wasn't sleeping because the baby was crying. He didn't know how to help. And I didn't know what to do. Nobody told me like, try this or try that. And so I kept trying. And then I went to the pediatrician, and, Ray was crying in the car the whole way there, crying during the pediatrician visit. I tried to nurse during the pediatrician visit. Nothing was happening. And the pediatrician said, keep doing what you're doing and pump. And here's formula just in case. And so we went home from the pediatrician, and I literally gave the baby to my mom, and I said, feed her. Just give her the formula. And I went upstairs and cried for 3 hours straight in bed. And of course, Ray had not eaten for 30% of her life. And so she downed the formula and then proceeded to vomit it all up. So everyone gave her more milk because she threw up. She took the milk, she threw it up, and then everyone said, okay, let's give her a second to process, calm down. At this point, I was not pumping because, it was day 4. I wasn't pumping because I just mentally, I couldn't sit up in a chair. I couldn't attach the pump to myself. I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want anything. And I hadn't slept. So woke up the next morning, overnight, I changed Ray's diaper a couple times, and I found blood in her diaper. Nobody tells you that your baby may have blood in their diaper. And when you've been a mom for 72 hours, you do not know how to process that. So I called the pediatrician and I said, there's blood in the baby's diaper. And something other people might not know about is when you have a baby girl might have a period. The baby girl's period might be different from the blood in her stool. So she did not have her period, which is actually just your mom hormones going through your baby, and it just has to be released. Again, totally normal. Nobody talks about it. But I called the pediatrician. The pediatrician said, oh, she's probably allergic to milk. And you're like, it's a baby. Their only function on earth is to drink milk. Like, what is happening? So it turns out Ray had a cow's milk protein allergy. So she couldn't have regular formula. So then we went through the process of trying to find a non-cow's milk based formula, a non-dairy formula, and gave that to her for a few days. In the process, tried to pump here and there, but didn't really take it seriously. Because again, I was like, I just want the baby to eat. I just want her to eat. She had lost 11% of her birth weight. They tell you they don't want to see more than 9%. You don't want to go into the double digits of birth weight loss. So my whole goal at the time was just get this baby fed and let's get her up to her birth weight. Let's recoup all of the losses over the past few days. But I still wanted to try to make breastfeeding work again because I had done all the work. I knew I could make it work. I knew I could do it. And so the hospital provided a lactation consultant. So I made an appointment with the lactation consultant. And I delivered in America. So the lactation consultant was an American woman, a white American blonde woman. So nothing about her I could relate to besides being American. And she first comment was very racist. So started off not on a good foot and sat through 2 hours of her talking at me about how to breastfeed. And then at the end, she said, so you are going to put the baby on your breast for as long as she wants. Then you're going to hand baby to dad to feed her your pumped milk. And then you're going to supplement with formula. And you're going to do that every 2 hours. And I walked out of that appointment with my husband and I said, I'll either do that or I'll be a good mom, but I can't do both. And again, even saying the statement at the time, I thought, I married an Arab man. Like, what is his response to that going to be? Because that's my job, breastfeed my baby, feed my baby. And I said, I'm not doing that. And if I'm going to do that, please don't expect anything else from me because I will have nothing else to give. And he said, it's your body. you do what you need to do. And that was the one thing. That was probably the only thing I would have been able to receive in that moment, and the only thing I would have been able to hear. And then I went home and my mom made a joke out of it. And she said, when your daughter goes to college, they're not going to ask her if she was breastfed. And I said, yeah, you're right. And now Ray is 7 months old. She's been on formula ever since, started solids 2 months ago. She's fine. But at the time, you are so mentally checked out. And the only thing you are checked in on is providing milk for your baby. And when you can't do that, your life turns upside down. So it was a very long answer to your question. I'm sorry. But all to say, the things that we're supposed to be able to do, sometimes we can't do it. And it's okay. It's okay. And please talk about these things. Everyone has to talk about it, because it had somebody told me, if you can't make it work, you're not a bad mom. Your baby will be fine. Your husband will still love you. Your parents will think you're okay. It would have saved a lot of mental anguish.
Mm-hmm. Fed is best, right?
Fed is best.
Mm-hmm.
Fed is best.
We're going to put aside the breast is best, and we're going to go with fed is best.
Fed is best.
Because that is what matters.
Yeah.
And you did mention that, your baby's going to be okay. Your partner's going to be okay. Your parents are going to be okay. But at what point did you feel like you were okay with that?
Oh, I'm not okay still.
Okay.
I'm not okay still. I mean, I tell myself I am. I tell myself it's fine. She's fine. Look at her. She's happy. She's healthy. She laughs. She's met all the milestones. She's fine. But I think if you scratch the surface of that, I still wonder, when you have your best thoughts in the shower, every day in the shower, I think, why did the hospital discharge me when the baby was crying? Why didn't the doctor on day 4 tell me, hey, try this? Why didn't the insurance company that sent me the free breast pump say, this is the schedule that you should use it, and call this number if it's not working? There were so many touch points where, in retrospect, now 7 months in, I think, I wonder if I could have made it work. I wonder if I could have tapped into everything I did for 9 months, reading and processing and learning. So I try to suppress all of that when it comes up. I don't dwell on it for more than the 5 minutes in the shower. But it's not entirely gone. It will be, but every morning I just think somebody could have helped me. Somebody could have helped me. Yeah.
I love your honesty, because you're being so raw about the emotions that come with these things, especially as a woman, especially as you had certain expectations, and when you weren't able to do those, it impacted you, and it still impacts you in a certain way. But I think also at the time you took the decision based on how it would make, you feel, and your mental health as well, which is also very, very important.
Yeah.
It's the mom is the glue that holds the household together, and your mental health is so important. And I've known you for a few years now, and you've always been someone that takes very good care of yourself, mind and body. And so tell us a little bit about your routine for, of course, the people that don't know. But how did that routine, in your opinion, help you through your pregnancy and through postpartum?
Oh, tremendously. I really like working out, and I like a hard, intense workout, because it's the only time of my day where I can check out and where I can't hear myself and I can't hear my own thoughts. And so I really prioritized that while I was pregnant. And again, I was reading all the things, and it said, if you work out and if you have good hip flexors and you go on the yoga ball and all this, your delivery will be 30 seconds and all that. So I wanted to prioritize movement mentally for myself, but also physically, because I was very scared of labor and delivery. And again, nobody tells you, like, oh, it's going to hurt. Oh, get an epidural. Oh, your epidural might not work. Period. Don't have a cesarean. Do everything to avoid having a cesarean.
Yeah.
But okay. Also, do everything to avoid having a cesarean. What does that mean? What can you actually do? And so, personally, I said, okay, the two things that are in my control are I can eat healthy and I can go to the gym, and when I have the energy. And I just wanted to know what I was eating and what I was ingesting, and eating like real food for my whole pregnancy, and going to the gym every day I woke up and had the energy for it. So first trimester maybe worked out once, probably worked out before I realized I was pregnant, and then was asleep for the rest of the weeks into the second trimester. Probably worked out every day of my second trimester. And then third, I was in America. It was like 45 degrees where I was. And, hottest, of course, hottest summer on record when you're 10 months pregnant. And so I prioritized all of that because those were the things that I could be in control of while going into this like whole new world of the unknown. And then postpartum, I know that being so active during pregnancy really helped post, because my body knew what it was supposed to do after the baby was out. And as soon as I got the all clear from my doctor to go back to the gym, I did. And when my husband doesn't bring chips into the house, I eat very healthy. But and Reese's Pieces now have started coming into the house. But up until then, it was just really being like of sound mind and body. And also I really want to set a good example for my daughter. And I want her to see that mom is strong and fit and active and prioritizes healthy eating, prioritizes like going to the gym. Because when I do that, I can show up better for her. And I want her to learn that. So it was something that I, was serious about before, but now have like really made it a personal ethos, just so that she sees a good example.
And looking back now, what is one thing you would say to your younger self?
Relax. You don't have to read everything. You don't have to consume everything that's out there. But also just talk and ask questions. I think I was scared to ask questions because nobody was having the conversation that you could then ask the questions about. So to come up with asking questions, out of the universe was there, A, who was going to answer them, and B, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know you don't know what to ask about. But I read so much and then I internalized it, and I didn't have somebody on the other side to say like, well, what did you go through, or how did you manage this? And you feel bad because the moms around you are dealing with their own stuff too, and they're taking care of their own kids, and they may not have the time to be able to answer your questions. But until we start normalizing that you can ask a question and your circle will show up for you. My circle is incredible. And just yesterday, I messaged friends saying, does taking your baby to the pediatrician ever get better? And the answer is no, it doesn't. But even that, and I know taking the baby to the pediatrician is not ever going to be a fun experience, but just being able to put the question out there and get a voice note back saying, no, but it'll be okay. And it's hard. They'll be fine. So yeah, I would just tell myself, it's okay. Ask questions. You might not know everything. The internet is not real, and people you see on the internet are not real. And if your house doesn't look a certain way, and if you don't look a certain way, and if you don't have your hair done, and if your gray hair comes out and you don't have your manicure done and all of that, it's fine. And nobody cares. And if they care, they're not the right people in your circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Social media is a highlighted reel.
Yes.
Of, what that person wants you to see. It's not the whole reality of things. But I think sometimes it's not about asking the questions. It's really just about vocalizing how you feel, right? Communicating.
For sure.
Sometimes just saying things out loud can already give you that peace that you need. And sometimes it's about, whether we like it or not, it's the validation that we get,
Uh-huh.
I know for me, sometimes I go to my husband and I tell him I feel a certain way because I know he's going to bring me up and he's going to remind me when I need to be reminded, and it's okay to need to be reminded, that you're doing a great job, right? And sometimes vocalizing how you feel getting your questions, getting your thoughts out there can help you get that validation that you need. And so 100% have those conversations, take care of yourselves. But to add to that, what advice would you end this episode with? I mean, for the mom out there or for the woman out there that's listening and that might be a certain age, thinking like time is passing her by, stressing about being able to start a family, what advice would you give her? And you can actually give the advice to the
Sure. Don't stress, because it's going to be harder to get pregnant if you're stressed. Look, I would say everyone's journey follows a different timeline. And until you are in this season of your life where this is meant to happen for you, it's not the right time. Your season is your season, regardless of how old you are, the noise around you, where you and your partner are in your relationship. You all have to be in the right season together for it to make sense. And the noise, and there's a lot of it, the noise is just noise. Let it go. Don't internalize it. And you need to be able to show up for yourself, number one, for your partner and for your baby. And if you are not mentally, physically, emotionally there, you won't be able to. So you first do everything you need to do to get into the right place, whether you're 25, 35, 45, whatever it is, and then take it from there and just ignore the noise.
I love that you said you have to be in the right season and your partner has to be in the right season. Do you feel like you're in the right season?
Yeah, I think so.
And how's motherhood now?
It's so fun. It's so hard. And every day I'm like, how can I learn something new every single day? And how did I not know so much going into this? But it's so fun. It's so fun. And there's nothing that prepares you for it. And there's nothing that is comparable on the joy level. I would like to sleep a little bit more. Probably should have listened to the people that told me to sleep before the baby came. But yeah, my kids they're amazing. They're amazing. And Ray, when you see this, I love you. You're so cute. And yeah, I'm so happy that I had the baby when I had the baby. I was in such a good place mentally and physically when it happened that it's only just carried forward. And I wish that for anyone who's thinking of having a baby or who is pregnant right now or who is in the middle of all of it right after having a baby, like once you get your head right and your body right and your mind and your spirit, I wish I could do it a million times.
You're in the right season.
In the right season.
Yeah. Well, I think this was such a nice reminder. Nesma, thank you so much for being on here. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you so much for reminding us that life sometimes has different plans for you. And it's okay when we don't follow a certain timeline or a certain path. Our story looks different, right? Every single person's motherhood journey is meant to look different. It's meant to be an individualized story. And so it's okay when things don't go according to plan. I mean, we have Exhibit 8 right here. Look at you are literally glowing. Like every time you talk about motherhood, you talk about Ray, you're glowing. And you're just, it's such a nice reminder that things do work out in the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And so if you've enjoyed this episode today, make sure to share it with someone that you know needs to hear what we talked about today. Hit that subscribe button below and hit that like button. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. You know where to find me. You can find me on @Madinat Mom's Instagram. You can find us on www.madinatmom.com, or you can send us an email, contact@madinatmom.com. Remember that if you have a story to share it with me. I'd love to be a part of it. I'd love to get your story out there. And until next time, take care of yourselves as fiercely as you take care of your little ones.